Good evening, everybody. This is Steve with Real Progressives. I have a real honor tonight. Gentleman that I've been chatting back and forth with for some time. He's a writer. He's a tech whiz. He's also a graduate of the Levy Institute's Bard College, new program for economics. Gentleman's name is Brad Voracek. The thing that I think is really neat about Brad is he writes for an outlet called the Minskys. And for those of you who follow Real Progressives and understand how important modern monetary theory is to getting anything done, by the way, Brad is a great writer, and his focus is largely on getting knowledge and information out to the public. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on this young man to let you see that this is just a broad-reaching movement, if you will. And it's not really even a movement. We're just people that have come into agreement with the facts that reality is good enough for us. So with that, welcome to the show, Brad.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I'm happy to be here and happy that we're able to talk about these ideas on a platform like this.
Awesome. All right, so do me a favor. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the Minskys and so forth.
Sure. So, I grew up in Southern California. My dad was an aerospace engineer, works at NASA. Growing up, I heard about trickle-down economics at some point. I remember being a young kid and questioning it, looking up at my dad, is that really how it works? And, eventually, we'll get back to that later, but eventually I strongly disagree that, giving the rich people more money is not going to lift us all up. And so I went to UC Berkeley, studied computer science there. Occupy Wall Street happened around my junior year, and so I kind of got interested in these ideas of how the economy works, what can cause a recession to happen. And, I'm an investigative kind of guy. I look at data a lot. I like researching this stuff. And so I had the question, well, how can we get a recession? What causes people to lose jobs? What causes people to, in Berkeley, there's a lot of homeless people. Why are people homeless? You kind of start to ask those questions when you're in this environment where everyone's scared and it's recessionary. And so I started digging into some blogs, reading the internet, reading some papers, and I discovered this Cullen Roche guy from Pragmatic Capitalism, and he kind of talked about some good stuff, and he pointed me to the Wynne Godley and Mark Lavoie monetary economics book, and reading about looking at balance sheets, and it was very different than what people were learning. The friends I had who are economists, what they were learning in their econ classes, which was mostly this math of calculus, taking derivatives, Kuhn-Tucker theorems, which I learned in the math department at UC Berkeley, and it's actually the Karush-Kuhn-Tucker theorem, and so it's really interesting how there was this whole different economics department learning similar math, but in a very different style, and saying this was the reality of the world without looking at if the models were actually useful. And then the sectoral balances graph, which you've seen and shared many times. Kind of, every time we pay down that federal debt, as that goes to, we start paying it down and reducing our deficits, then we got a recession. And that looked, pretty clear to me on the graph. You can see it every time we start paying it down, right afterwards, there's a recession. And so I'm like, I got to study this more. I found out Wynne Godley passed away at the Levy Institute, along with Hyman Minsky, who I didn't know about it when I applied, but has come to be one of my economists that I idolize. And I went to school at the Levy Institute and learned a lot more about it, and it's been great. It's been interesting to learn about, and it seems like it's just the facts, just data, which in this world I don't even know if we care about data and facts anymore, but I do.
Well, I'll tell you right now, and I'm not going to pull any punches. The movement that I represent, the movement that I'm a member of, that I'm a family member of within the progressive community, is unfortunately big on joining things, but not big on learning things. They're big on being buddies at a campfire, but they're not big on learning how to make policy happen. And so we're in this awful, awful, awful situation. And you and I talked off camera a little bit about this. There's an article by one of my favorite writers over there at New Economic Perspectives, J.D. Alt. And J.D. Alt has done Millennials Money. He's done some great videos for dollars and diagrams. But he did one particular slam dunk article that is must read for everybody called The Oppressive Free Lunch. And what it talks about is how Paul Ryan and the GOP and the rest of the Ayn Rand lovers are out there actively trying to make us feel guilty for receiving any kind of public services, for even needing a government. They're basically acting like somehow or another it's demeaning to mankind to receive this. And then he sat down and he broke down all the great sensibilities that all the progressives all share, even the ones on the Democratic Party who end up doing horrible things. To a fault, will check the boxes for the sensibilities. Yeah, we should never let the poor suffer. Yeah, we should fix the environment. Yeah, we should make college this, that, and the other, right? One by one by one, they all check it off. But then he gets to the bottom and he says, however, none of them can answer the one question that prevents the progressive community from ever being anything more than a squeaky toy. How are you going to pay for it? And on my life, the progressive community would rather sit there and just stay angry, stay in the struggle, be peace and love, than actually do anything meaningful to find a way in our lifetime, not in some other lifetime, in our lifetime, pay for these great ideas. They are more than content staying stuck in the struggle. What are your thoughts on that, Brad?
Sure. Well, so, when I grew up my dad was pretty conservative, and I grew up in a red kind of neighborhood. And so the how are you going to pay for it, the debt fear mongering was very prevalent in the community I grew up in. And, in my perspective, I'm not afraid of the federal debt. I don't understand why everyone's so afraid of it, because, I ask people, what's going to happen to your life? What's going to make your life worse off if we pay down the federal debt? And they can't answer. They really can't answer. And so I think, maybe it is important. It's understanding money is important and it's complicated. But, I think you're right in that we can, if we just ignore, or we for a while, like, let's suspend our disbelief and just say, okay, maybe we can produce money. We can produce money. The government makes money. And so we can find the money, we can mobilize our resources by just creating the money and directing it to people to build cool things and make awesome stuff. I mean, we do it for war all the time. And I think we can do it for other things. We have unemployment. There's still people looking for work. I walk down the street, I talk to people who are looking for work, unemployed people on the street. And I think we can pay for it. We have the money, we make it,
Well, that's a great point, Brad. I think that when you think about it, Ellis will tell you, I've been saying it and, repeating what the masters say, that MMT is not a movement. MMT is not a philosophy. MMT is not some sort of theory to be debated and maybe, let's meet in the middle. MMT is a description of what is. To deny MMT is literally to deny reality. And I stand firmly on that. And for those that doubt this and stuff like that, but they'll sit there and complain about the Federal Reserve, prove it. Show me all those things, right? They don't understand the Federal Reserve is merely a scorekeeper, digital keystrokes. They're not sitting there with piles of fat stacks of Benjamins and stuff like that to dole out and give away. They are merely like the hub that sits there and creates deposits and removes deposits. They are not the creator of the U.S. dollar. When we think about this, Congress writes a bill. Congress produces instructions. Those instructions then are followed by the people that were created by Congress. and they create deposits, and then the Treasury does whatever it does, writing bills, writing checks, doing whatever it does. This is not rocket science. You can get into all the machinations that they try and do beyond the holy of holies to try and keep the plebes, ignorant, like they did back in the old days with Catholicism and stuff. Back then, I think it was just called the church. But the point is that today we're peeling back the curtain, if you will, and we see that the emperor has no clothes. We know the truth, and we've got enemies like the Pete Peterson Foundation that talk about fix the debt, and they wax you're going to hand down the debt to your grandchildren. It's going to be awful. And I'm like, we're not going to have a planet to live on if you don't spend on green energy today. But there's our movement. Once again, marching in place, arms pumping feverishly, fists in the air, the struggle is real, all this good stuff. But when it comes to actually being able to deliver on it, all they can do is just go, yeah, the bad people over there. We got to end something. Let's end the Fed. And this is what I think is the real value in MMT to the progressive community, to anybody that actually wants to embrace reality, is this is how you get it done. This is how shit gets done, right? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like now it's going to take an act of Congress to get the things we want done. And so, rather than looking at how we're going to pay for it, we need to, what do we want, first of all? That should be part of the discussion. And once we decide that, well, we need to demand Congress to give it to us. That seems obvious. And the money system is complicated. Like, banks can create money also. Like, they make loans, which create deposits. And maybe 80% of the money or deposits in existence are that kind of money. But the government gives out bank charters. The government is the one who creates the laws, that creates the structure that allows the banking system to create money that way. And, it's a hard problem, and I encourage everyone to look at the balance sheets yourself. And I think you'll see, if you look at the balance sheets, that this is the way, MMT is the way the economy works. It's the way the money system works. And so then, if you've accepted that, if you accept that this is how it works, what's the next question? How are we gonna, what are we gonna demand from our Congress? And so in my master's thesis, I looked at a policy called Employ Young Americans Now, proposed by Bernie Sanders and John Conyers. And it doesn't ask the question of how we're going to pay for it. It just straight up says, we're going to spend money to create jobs for disadvantaged youth. And 10% of our disadvantaged youth would be able to get paying jobs if that bill passed. And what's it take to get that bill passed? It doesn't take finding money. It takes getting everyone to believe that Congress has power, Congress can serve the people, and we just need to demand that they do it.
That's a beautiful, oh my God, like if I could coin that in a meme, I would do it. I've been trying to explain it. They're like, how is this even a policy? Well, it's a foundation. It is the most important truth, because it's like you can't get green energy from the federal government because, honest to God, the capitalists out there that are looking at ROI models of 2 years and less, I mean, they're not even looking at 2 years anymore. I think they've shrunk it to 18 months. They're looking at a return on investment right now. If they can't get a stock thing for their wealthy financiers, then they're not going to do it. So there's a million great ideas that have maybe a 5-year ROI, return on investment, folks, that doesn't fit into the company model. So the only people that are not profit-driven are the creators of the U.S. dollar, and that is the federal government. So our federal government could easily say, we're going to convert to green energy today. Oh, Mr. Car Manufacturer, you're saying you have a problem with it? Well, we want our kids to live. We want them to be able to survive. So we're going to go ahead and subsidize converting your gas-guzzling engine to some hydroelectric engine. Whatever, I don't know, I'm just coming up with a Tesla, I don't care. Whatever the means that makes the most sense, there are things that we could choose, because I liken this way. I've been saying that the federal government's money that it spends is not our tax dollars, it's our national treasures. This is our money. It's not our tax dollars. It's our money in terms of what do we want from society? What do we want with our country? What are our values? And right now, if you were to look at America and you were just to assess what our values are, down at the very bottom would be healthcare. And even below that would be human beings. At the top of the food chain would be mother of all bombs. Then you would have F-35 planes. Then you would have $500 hammers. Then you would have friggin' toilet seats with gold, whatever. But human beings and our lives and our jobs and everything else would be way down on the bottom. And folks take that because they believe that we're broke. They believe that Social Security is broke. They believe all these things. And then when people have the audacity to ask me the pertinence of MMT and a progressive agenda or a progressive platform or progressive anything, I just say, wow, you know what? I've got time. You tell me how we're paying for it. You tell me how you're paying for your national platform. If you can't tell it to me, then I will have to tell you how it's done. It's that simple, because I'm at a point now where I've got 9 children. My 9 kids, they're waiting to live. They're not living to wait. And I'm telling you right now, I want my kids to be able to survive. If I die tomorrow, I want to know that we've planted the seeds that they can have a progressive future. And right now, I have not seen anything from the progressive community that tells me they are serious about the progressive platform at all. Nothing but conspiracy bullshit about Rothschilds, nothing but garbage about the Federal Reserve. They don't even know what the Federal Reserve is, but they're all wanting to end it. I mean, on and on and on, the list of propaganda and myths that stick in our progressive community are literally holding us back, Brad.
Well, I'm a young guy. I'm only 26, and I'm pretty new to politics. I've spent most of my life in school, but in my lifetime, we've seen 2 iterations of figuring out how to organize. We had Occupy Wall Street, and then young people, we got out there and they said we didn't know why we were chanting or we didn't know what we were protesting. And, I could hear it, what we were protesting. We want some decent healthcare. We want some decent jobs. But somehow they said we didn't know what we were doing. Okay, well, here comes Bernie Sanders, our second iteration at organizing. And we're getting better. Like, Bernie Sanders comes along and he says, these are the things we want. And, most people agree with those things. But everyone's like, we can't afford that. We can't do that in our country. But everyone says we're the richest country in the world and we can't afford these things. It seems like malarkey. And, and that's like a kind of surface level, but then you dig it down into the details. And even at the detailed level, it seems like that's the case, is we can't afford to do these things.
Well, did you follow, obviously you were interested in the Bernie Sanders campaign, and you obviously know that Bernie surrounded himself with modern monetary theorists like Stephanie Kelton, William Black, I believe Randy Wray was involved, James Galbraith, a number of others were involved as well, even in the background supporting it. But yet here we are, progressives today. This is no joke. Do you know how many of the progressives in our community have no idea who Stephanie Kelton is? I'm not even joking. She spoke at the People's Summit last year, but yet the people that are planning the People's Summit are too daft to even know that she spoke there. And they're saying, that's right-wing propaganda. Right-wing propaganda, mind you. Why? Because they have a fetish for taxation. They don't have any clue about what it takes to actually make federal government spend on the public purpose. And that's another term they don't have any understanding of. What is the public purpose? They don't understand that either. Can you talk a little bit about what the public purpose is from your days at Bard? Because I know you were with Pavlina and L. Randall Wray, and those are 2 individuals in particular that I know are very, very keen on the public purpose.
Definitely. I mean, so Randy Wray was our professor in this program. And Pavlina and Stephanie are people that we see at the Levy conference, which is next week, by the way, and they're having a live stream Tuesday, Wednesday. So if anyone's interested in hearing these people talk, there's the Minskys conference next week. It's going to be live online. So I recommend everyone check it out and see these people talk in their environment. And so the public purpose, I mean, so I focus a lot on the job guarantee and jobs because I think that's really a way that we can move this forward. We can change the definition of work. We can create art. We can, living in a state right now where there's Democrats running. I'm in Arizona. There's Democrats running on a policy platform of public education because public education has been dismantled. There's vouchers for charter and private schools that regular citizens can't afford, and there's it's ridiculous that a public education is the foundation of a policy platform for a politician in the world that I was born in. Like, to me, it seems like the public purpose, well, you start with the public school, you get everyone an education. And an education, you don't have 40 students in a classroom. You need less than that. You need maybe 20. You talk to some teachers and they say, I can teach 20 kids, but 30, 40, this is impossible. And I agree. So how do we get the money? And then that goes to the question. They ask, how do we get the money to pay for public schools? How do we double the number of teachers so that we can reduce class sizes? How do we build this infrastructure? And we demand it and we do it.
Amen, brother. Hold on. Let's take that step for a second, because you're talking about something entirely appropriate and mind-boggling for most people. Take a moment and explain the difference between a state and the federal government in terms of how they view money, how they enact policy, and why states are so constrained, whereas the federal government really is not.
Yeah, so you can, the phrasing kind of is that a state is the currency user and the federal government is the currency issuer. So at a state level, the federal government serves as this massive redistribution pool. So like you have some states that collect a lot more in state taxes, and then there are some states which run deficits at the state level, and the federal government serves to move this money between these states and serves as the bigger connecting piece between us all. And they're the ones who, a state budget doesn't only controls a certain proportion of like public education, and most of the budget comes from the federal government. So in some ways it has to be done on the federal level, but we have a lot of states who think that they can do it on their own. And maybe there are ways, like North Dakota has a public bank, and I'm not an expert in this area, but it certainly seems like North Dakota fared the most recent recession pretty well, and their students are in less debt because this public bank kind of serves the purpose. But I don't know how that whole public banking system fits in with the bigger picture, so to speak. And it's something I'm interested in, something I'm trying to look into. But there are things we can do at the state level, but honestly, I think based on how the money system works, we really do have to demand our federal representatives to be the ones who champion our causes. Because at a state level, there are a lot more constraints than on the federal level, it seems like. And then, even on the federal level, you get into big multinational corporations, and it's not easy. I don't think it's easy, but I think we're moving in the right direction with MMT. Well,
so let me ask you a question, Brad, because you've sent me some really cool models that you've done and stuff like that, and I believe it was regarding sectoral balances, correct? So to me, I'm going to give you my 2 cents, but I want to hear from you. You nailed it earlier. Everybody that is remotely economically literate has seen that graph of the foreign sector, the public sector, and the private sector, and can clearly see every time we quote unquote reduce the deficit, we end up with a recession. It is like literally, and every time we've tried to pay down the debt, we've ended up with sometimes even worse, a depression. It is not like, well, let's theorize about some economics. Let's theorize, and that may be the most insulting comment that people that don't understand economics say when you're telling them this is how it is. I'm not even telling you any deep, complex theorizing of models. I'm just telling you how it is. Sectoral balances are science. When you're looking at currency analysis, it's science. When you tell me, as I'm telling you this specifically, I'm breaking it down step by step, and you go, that's just theorizing. This is not an issue of being tolerant of others. This is not an issue of, well, everybody's got an opinion. This is facts, and this is saving lives. And like I said, I've got 9 kids. So how does this play into it? Talk about sectoral balances for us.
Yeah, I mean, so like on my website, like you said, you pull the data from the federal government, and you can look at how the sectoral balances work, and so Minsky said money is an IOU, and anyone can make money. The trouble is getting it accepted, and so we've, as a society, have accepted the dollar bill as that piece of money, a bank deposit that you can get from an ATM. It's a piece of paper. And the thing is, every time you get money, so there's a thing called double entry accounting, and every time that you get some money, another person is losing some money, or every time it's recorded in 2 places at every time, and that's what the sectoral balances are describing. So when the deficit is increased, that on the government's balance sheet, it looks like a debt. But on the other side of that, there's some money that someone else is holding. So you have to look at both sides of the coin, so to speak, and people don't do that. They just look at the big, scary federal debt clock, and they don't understand the other side of that money, because money is a 2-sided transaction between humans. And so then when we look at this sectoral balances graph, you ask some questions. You're like, wow, that's how it works. How do I understand more? And then you can look at Win Godley's book is amazing in this respect. And so one of the models, the little marble thing I showed you, is very similar to Win Godley's first model in that book, where there's just the government, there's no foreign sector, there's no private sector. It's just the government making money and showing how the balance sheets would work in that type of society. And then he evolves throughout the book into different types of systems that have private sector debt and that have other countries, not just the one government. There's multiple governments. But you start at that very basic level of, this is how a balance sheet works, this is how money works at a very basic level, and then you keep iterating until you get to the system we have today, which is very complex. But at the very root, there's the seed that it's a balance sheet, and that's how the money system is working.
Yeah, here's a question I have for you. Obviously, we all are used to our own family household budget. We're all used to, in some way, shape, or form, paying our bills, be it writing a check, which is just offering instructions to our bank, or slicing a card, which is still, yet again, an electronic version of giving instructions to a bank. And neither time do you have cash in hand. I mean, we're talking about most of our dollars are digital in nature. I consider paper money almost like you're a data guy, you're a network guy. So think about this for a minute, right? If you go back to old fast packet technology, you buy ATM or frame relay services, you would have permanent virtual circuits running across them. And you would say, okay, we've only got 1.544 megabits per second on this T1, but I can oversubscribe that because I know we're only going to use this much of it at any given time. So you might have a DS3 worth of data lined up to it, but only going down to a T. Anyway, point is that I consider the cash merely like a representation of, in-play dollars. And as soon as you put it back in, it's all digital once again. I mean, these are like coupons that float around. I think people confuse the idea of paper dollars as the only form of money there is, and they don't realize that it's only a minor representation of the whole.
Yeah, I think cash is something like 5% of the whole money. Most of it is sitting in banks as bank deposits, like you said. But the thing is that those bank deposits are redeemable for cash, and so that's the thing that you have to keep in mind. So they do the piece of paper does kind of represent that that bank deposit in the system, and that's and it is accounted for by the banks, and all the money, all the dollar bills that are in existence, they're accounted for.
Right now, but when you say that, think about it for a minute. So if 5% of the money in the world, well, the U.S. dollars, let's say, are paper, that means 95% of the dollars are never coined, never minted, never turned into paper. They're just keystroke deposits. That's what our financial system is made of. And the way I jokingly say it, the USA will run out of dollars when the guy with the fingers at the keyboard finally wears them down to a nub, his nose can no longer hit the keys, and we're out of keystrokes. That's how we run out of money. I mean, help me out there, man. Am I close?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is that big problem with people viewing the federal government budget as the same as a household budget. And it's something that I don't agree with. And I looked at the data to get to that conclusion, and I encourage everyone to do it themselves, because you can't just trust us. You can't just say, oh, these guys know what they're saying because they're blah, blah, blah. You have to look at it yourself and come to your own conclusions. But I think you'll find, if you look at it, that the federal government's budget shouldn't be run like a household budget. And it's a huge problem that we have to get over before we can make any progress. And that's so frustrating to me.
It is. As I sit there and you know, I wish I was higher in the echelon of respect, and I had the great pedigree. The MBA is as worthless as the paper it was printed on. I wish that people would just do the research themselves. But here's the problem. They don't have enough time. They're bored. They think it's above their head. They don't pay attention. And they go back to what they know, and that is they sit there with the boob tube and the remote control, and they flip around, and all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and there's Ron Paul talking about the coming economic collapse. So whenever the YouTube videos go around, the Federal Reserve's about to collapse, I'm like, did they run out of keystrokes again, damn it? You know, and it's like, what is going on? Why do these people say these things? And worse yet, this may be the worst thing, why do people believe it? And so, you know, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, you know, why do we borrow U.S. dollars from China? Mr. Chinese man, could you please perchance give me some U.S. dollars, please, sir? And it's like, just saying it out loud should make you feel like a sense of shame that like only the kick me sign on the back could outdo. And people literally believe that we borrow U.S. dollars from China. They don't realize that China, because the Fed is trying to defend a positive interest rate, sells these securities, sells these treasury bonds. They buy them because, wait, they want to save in U.S. dollars. So there they are saving in U.S. dollars. People just assume, well, what if China takes all the money out of the Fed? What if they cash in all their treasuries and they don't want to save in U.S. dollars anymore? Well, that's the national treasure. That's our national assets. All of a sudden, that money's in play. I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
It's frustrating, but also at the same time, you know, you see some of our commentators who want to talk about the basic income and job guarantees. And I think at some point we have to, you know, just stop getting frustrated, stop fighting the issue, and move forward with the things we can do with MMT. Because once you understand that that's how it works, and there's so much you can do. There's so much that we can do as a society that's like really beautiful, but it just takes that understanding. And so, you know, like if we want to talk about the job guarantee or basic income, you know, those are things that we can do. I think it makes sense to me that everyone willing and able should be able to find a job. Like that doesn't seem like something unreasonable to ask for or something unreasonable to demand. And, you know, it means a lot of, it's going to mean some difficult things. Like we have people who can't get through high school because they have to take care of a younger sibling. And so we need programs for people who can't make it through the school system, but they have to make some kind of money. You have to like make some money to get some food to stay alive. And like, if those very basic necessities aren't taken care of, then how do we expect people to be able to actually get an education, get a high-skilled job, learn these things? Because there are people in our country, the richest world in the country, so to speak, who are struggling with these very basic necessities, and that seems so. It seems absurd, and like, you know, I'm a young guy looking at this, and I don't know, it just seems ridiculous, and I don't know how to.
You wrote a great article. It's one of my favorite articles out there, and you basically said that the big and the JG are complementary, not at each other's throat. and they work together. But you also, and if I'm wrong here, I'm sure you'll know where I got this from. But I think it may have been you and I talking. I don't know. All I know is that I've been really hung up on the idea of a BNG, not a BIG, the basic needs guarantee. Was that you?
Yeah, I think I put that in there because, yeah, like, I think we were, at least what I was reading in my kind of own echo chamber, you know, they were kind of this basic income job guarantee, fight. And it's like, what is the purpose, guys? Like, we have to get down to the root. What are we trying to solve? We're trying to make sure that anyone who is born into this country has decent food, decent healthcare, a place to live. And, you know, I think that's the things we can guarantee to people. And how we do that is going to be a debate. It's going to be problematic. And, you know, if we have people with special needs, we're going to have to work with them. And maybe we can't just expect everyone to be able to work a McDonald's job flipping burgers. Maybe that's a little unrealistic at this point. Maybe we need to work with those people to figure out the types of jobs that they can do and the way they can find purpose in their life. And I don't think it's going to be, you know, it's not as simple as saying, oh, you know, there's a lot of talk about, like, what kind of jobs are people going to do? How do we, you know, there's no profitable jobs. There's no good jobs for people to do if they don't have any skills. Well, it's like, well, you know, do you care about other people at all? Maybe we should just try and work with other people and try to understand how we can get them a life that is fulfilling and passionate and something they can feel happy, you know, when they're doing their day-to-day life. And, you know, I've worked in a big business and I've talked to a lot of people who work in big corporations, and there are people who don't enjoy what they're doing. They feel like they're wasting their time, and they're pushing around, you know, they're sitting at a desk bored, and like that's so sad for me. Like, people sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day bored with nothing to do. Like, I don't think that's not the world I want to live in, you know? Like, and so if we have, maybe we can reduce the working day more. There's a lot of things that we can do, but we do, like, as a general population, there's these mental blocks that people have that we have to get past, that they have to get past. And so maybe if we're the people who are already past these blocks, it's our job to show how beautiful, like, the world can be, and if we just have the will to do it. And so, you know, I know you talk a lot about, like, unemployment and, like, people are dying, and I agree with you. Like, in my master's thesis, there's these great articles by some great researchers who look at the link between unemployment and suicide rates. And, you know, suicide kills more people than like police violence in this country. And not that that's not an important issue, but, you know, the big issues are health and mental health, and it's something that we're not prioritizing. Our budgets don't reflect those values. We're not funding them, and it doesn't make sense.
Let me ask you a question. As we go through this and we look at the job, because, you know, as all of us on the MMT side of the world know, the job guarantee is kind of like the Valhalla of the whole, what would be the prescriptive side of MMT.
Holy grail.
You know, exactly. And as you think about that, all of a sudden now, instead of a gold standard, it's a people standard, right? We've pegged the economy to you and I. And so if they screw with you and I, they destroy the economy. And so we are now the people standard, the job standard, so to speak. And I'm going to take task, you know, look, I love Warren Mosler. Like, I mean, like, father figure. I love the guy. And I love Pavlina, and I love Randy. And when I talk to them, I tremble even a little bit because I think so highly of these folks. But let me just tell you, as I talk with Ellis Winningham, and Ellis is like my spirit brother, okay, in this whole thing. We both have the same kick you in the head kind of approach to this. But he's got a far more expansive view of the job guarantee. And the way I look at it, and I've come to believe that he's right on this, because this eliminates the concept, in my opinion, it takes the wind right out of the sails of the big folks, and it puts everything in perspective. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization at the top. In my opinion, the redefinition of what work is allows us all to pursue who and what we are. not just some transitional, hey, let me go be a buffer stock for the private sector to hire me out. I'm looking at this more of, okay, I know it's not going to make me a mint, but I can do what I want to do in a society that values more than just profit. I can actually self-actualize. I can do something for my local community. I can do something at the local school. I can teach kids guitar. I can teach them a painting class. I can teach them to surf. I can even do friggin' bush sculptures if I want with my, whatever it is that I want to do.
Those things aren't profitable. How are you going to do them?
Exactly. That's my point. And that to me is the essence of the job guarantee. And the next piece to this, and I see this is really, really almost criminal that we have not been able to penetrate, minority communities with this knowledge, because quite frankly, a lot of the minority communities that are impoverished in the inner cities and stuff like that, this stuff is like, hey man, it's great that you got the luxury to talk about that. I'm trying to survive. And it's like, if you realize that we're trying to help you survive, this is for everybody. This is colorblind. This is literally, it's just right. This is just right as rain. And all of a sudden, the people in Flint, Michigan are no longer stuck drinking poisoned water. They can up and leave and go to they can go to Denver and drink Rocky Mountain water and smoke Rocky Mountain High. They can do whatever they want and know they have a job waiting for them the next day. Federal job right then, right there. No fuss, no muss. And they are free to tell the capitalists and the renters and so forth, all the people seeking, looking for the renters and so forth, they can tell them, serve my needs or be gone. Money doesn't grow on rich people. Our government creates it. You guys lost the power. You no longer have power over my life. I'm going to live to my potential. I mean, that's the way I see it.
I like what you said there about redefining work, and I think that's very important because, I see it in my day-to-day life that we have a huge sector of volunteers in our world, in our economy in the United States. We have people who volunteer at homeless shelters, who volunteer at food banks, who volunteer picking up trash from the streets. And that is work. That's hard work. I've done it. I've packed food boxes. That's difficult stuff. It's not simple, but somehow we don't value it. We don't pay people to do those jobs. And it doesn't make it. Yeah, well, I'm going to keep saying it doesn't make sense because I'm so flabbergasted here. But I think that we talk to a lot of people who think it does make sense to pay these people, to pay volunteers who are packing food boxes for people who are hungry. That is work, and that's something we can pay people to do if we have the will to do it. And
yes.
Like this quote here, who's Lynn DeFore, like all the volunteers could be earning a job guarantee wage. Amen. I agree with that wholeheartedly, that there's so many volunteers and all we need to do, and we need to give those people some money so that there's a way to give back to your community and make a little money so that you can survive.
Well, let's talk about that right there, because you obviously, writing that article you wrote, know that the pushback from the bigs is, hey, you're making people do this. It's like, no, it's a voluntary program. You can choose not to participate. This is not, forced labor. This is not somehow or another the friggin' prison system making friggin' license plates on your back for free kind of thing. I mean, let's spend a few minutes just debunking the false claims that the big folks put onto the job guarantee, and so that we can show them that we're compatible, compassionate, and there need not be this fight. Instead of acting like what we're saying is somehow or another a bastardized version of Calvinism, they can literally understand that by pegging the economy to the job guarantee, it's far more than just here's some money and here's a job. It actually stabilizes the entire nation.
Yeah, so I mean, the job guarantee, the big thing is that it's anyone willing and able to work can find a job. And those are the key things. You have to be willing to work. I personally don't believe that you can sit around all day and do nothing. I've tried it. You get bored. And so I think that people do need to find some passion in their life if they want to have fulfilling lives. And that's what the job guarantee kind of enables, willing and you're able. And then we have, obviously there's people who have disabilities who maybe can't work some jobs. And so that's where, other forms of social support come into play. And I think that we do need to support people who can't fully participate in some, super crazy job that makes you a ton of money and in the society we live in.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the Minskys for a minute. Talk to me. This is a wonderful publication. You guys, in my opinion, you need more writers because you guys need more content because we're jonesing for each article that comes through there. And obviously even New Economic Perspectives, in my opinion, doesn't have enough volume of traffic in terms of output. What's going on at the Minskys, man? You guys rock.
Yeah, so we're the first group of the master's students that went through the Levy Institute. We found that there weren't a lot of outlets to talk about the ideas that we have been learning, and so we made our own. That's the way things. We voluntarily made our own, and no one's paying us to do it. We just decided that we needed an outlet to talk about these ideas at the very least. And so, Heska is our awesome illustrator and helps get. I think, illustration is really important in the social media world because, you see a cool picture, you're going to click on it on your feeds. And so that's important. And then we have, I was able to help with the technology. And then we have all these great economics students who are able to write about what they're learning and their thoughts and their ideas. And so we wanted to create that place for people. And we are accepting outside contributions now. And I encourage people who have new economic ideas to send them our way, and we'll try and get them out there for you. And so the Minskys, you want more content. We've been trying. It's almost been a year now since I wrote our first blog post, and almost every week we've had one article, which is something that's really amazing, for a group of volunteers who aren't getting paid, who have to try and make a living, make some money some other way. And so we've made it done. We've done the best we can, and we need all the help we can get to get more good content out there.
How do people? Well, so obviously we don't just want somebody sitting there talking about the Rothschilds, right, and everything, because we got to live in reality, and we rebuke in unreality. But how would somebody that actually understands the stuff actually submit something? What is the website? How do people reach you guys?
Yeah, on theminskys.org, you can check us out. There's a tab that says contribute on there, and you send something to our email, and we can talk to you about your idea and try to progress it.
So do you think a guy like Steve Grumbine, who writes bombastic, I'm just playing. I'm not even going to try and put you guys into the awkward situation of trying to take my writing. But I got some flame waiting for my fingers. I will be publishing on Real Progressives probably tonight or tomorrow. I've got a major article I'm trying to work on right now. I haven't written one in a while, but this one is going to be a flamethrower because I've absolutely had enough of the inertia in this movement. It's so much inertia, I don't think there is a movement at times. People genuinely, I swear on my life, Brad, for me right now, I lost my father in September, and everything changed in that moment for me. I can't even begin to tell you how many synapses in my brain shifted because of the fact that I realized how temporary life is. And I realized that God gave me some gifts, or however you want to view the world, somehow or another, I was given a few gifts. And I feel like if I'm not doing something 24 hours a day, I'm wasting them. And I look at my kids and I look at the evil that's going on in the world right now. And then I look at the putrid nature of progressive leadership in America today. And I realize they don't know their ass from their elbow when it comes to how to fund these great ideas. And so they march in place. And I'm done with the hamster wheel. I don't want to cheer anyone on. I will not fall in love with another politician, no matter how closely aligned our sensibilities are, until they prove to me that they understand how to frick to pay for a progressive agenda. And I honestly, I see people patting me on the head like, now, you and your pet theory, your pet econ thingy, You just go run along, little boy. It's just a pet econ thing. It's a theory. It's another theory. We don't need to be theorizing and all this bullshit. And I'm telling you right now, not one of them can actually pay for their plans. Not one of them actually understands. Not one of them cares. How can you follow a party? Seriously, literally, how can you follow a party that doesn't have a cohesive, coherent economic strategy? How can you follow that? Once you know, how can you even give them any lip service of support when you realize that they genuinely don't care? I don't get it.
I don't think you can. I think you have to. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know who's going to be the ones to get it through to our politicians. But I'm trying to talk to mine about this stuff. I'm showing up to events. I'm trying to talk to people about these ideas, and I think that's what we all have to do. We all have to show everyone the sectoral balances graph with the recessions overlaid and say, explain this. How do you explain this? This is just data. This is just facts. Why does this happen? Should we really be that afraid of the debt? Should we really be? Because it doesn't look like it.
I want to show you a comment. I'm going to put it up on the screen from Alex Marin. Look, this is where we're at right now. These are the kinds of things I see. And it's like, and Alex, forgive me. I'm not trying to call you out and like make you, feel like a fool here. That's not my intent. But the idea is that many lefties, rather than take the time to learn MMT, rather than take the time to learn, I don't even want to call it MMT, rather than take the time just to learn federal financing from 1971 to present, they would rather just dismantle the system because they don't understand it. And the fact is that the system works just fine. It's the people in Congress that don't. You can look at the Federal Reserve and you can whine and wax about decisions they made, but the reality is that you don't like neoliberals running the Fed, and you can't elect neoliberals in the presidency or in Congress, etc. When you want to get rid of neoliberalism, show me, don't tell me. Stop caving in and supporting neoliberals. Fight for a real progressive change. And you're going to get neoliberal policies because neoliberals elect and nominate neoliberals. It's like unfathomable. Hey, yeah, I'm a neoliberal, but I'm going to go ahead and appoint progressives to the Fed. Yeah, that's how I'll do it. That's what I'll do. It just doesn't. It defies logic. And so this is no slight to Alex. This is just merely stating the system is fantastic. Our ignorance is not, though. That's the problem. I mean, talk to me a little bit about what changes you would do to the regulatory environment, because obviously Glass-Steagall was a big deal. The repeal of Glass-Steagall, the housing crash, all the CDOs and all the other shadow banking, you name it. I know you heard some of this stuff. Talk to me a little bit about MMT's play within that world. Is that something you feel you can talk to?
It's complicated, but I think the system is working well for the people who are running it right now. It's serving someone pretty well, I think. And so the question is, can we use that same system to serve all of us? And so far, from my understanding, it seems like we can. It's just going to be a lot of hard work. And it's sad because it kind of makes sense in a way why you want to dismantle public education if understanding, if having a decent education leads you towards this kind of view, then, maybe you don't want people to learn that. And that's maybe a kind of conspiracy out there theory, but it's something that we need to think about, I think. And looking at the school system is important because if you read the Econocracy review that I did on the Minskys, you can see how this type of Econ 101 thinking pervades throughout everywhere. Anyone who goes to a big Harvard college has to take Econ 101. And, the fact that economics doesn't describe reality, it certainly seems like having a lot of people out there who are in positions of power thinking a certain way definitely serves a certain population. And if we can get people to think a different way, then I think a different population can be served.
Well, I think about it like this, and we're up on the hour, but unless you have to rush, I just take a few minutes here to say this. I look at it like this. I have something called psoriatic arthritis. And psoriatic arthritis is brutal. For those people who have it, you know what I'm talking about. It's an autoimmune disorder. The shots that come with autoimmune disorder are outrageously expensive. I mean, stupid expensive. There's some dialysis type things, Remicade, things like that are like pre-cancer, pre-chemo type therapies and things like that that are outrageously expensive. There are a lot of people like my father who, when he passed, he had something called progressive supranuclear palsy, which is something that like some less than 1% of the population has. And it's so rare that they just don't even, it's not going to make them any money, so they don't really care to do a whole lot of research, and there's not a whole lot of treatment out there. And so you see all these things happening, right? You see the environment collapsing and so on and so forth. And people confuse capitalism with our money system. And our monetary system can support socialism. It can support capitalism. It can support communism. It could support some new thing that we don't know of yet. Bottom line is it's not the monetary system that is the problem. The problem is the execution and the powers that be leveraging it for their own whatever. And the fact is that, and I'll use the Catholic thing again, Martin Luther back in the day, got tired of all the penances and all the fake stuff that the church started putting into effect to make money and to bilk people and so forth. And so he pinned up his 99 Theses and basically turned the world on its head. And it was sacrilege, etc. But the average person was not supposed to read the Bible. The average person wasn't supposed to read the Bible all the way up into the 1900s, into the 20th century. So, and there's still people that consider it something that the people shouldn't read. That's the same way as with economics largely, in that people have gotten to the point where they believe that that's only something for them. And then when you do talk about it, they cling back to that whole, it's just a theory. And so, when you think about that, it's not the money system so much as it is the derpitude of the citizenry and the fact that they're purposely obfuscating it with a bunch of mystical debt instruments and mystical theories and ideas that they cloud everything with, when it's really quite simple. I mean, all these mechanics and stuff like that are put there to confuse people and to allow others to make money. The reality is that we are the ones cut out. I mean, you look at the wealth gap from like back in the 70s to present. I mean, we're talking about like almost a vertical. It's just wow, in terms of income inequality. That is not the system. That is the people in charge pushing it. I mean, Milton Friedman was famous for saying, hey, basically, no more fiscal policy. You can't do that. We got to keep the money static. You guys go into debt when it's a low time, and when it's a high time, you pay off your debt. Everything will be fine then. And lo and behold, the inflationary freaks, the folks that are like palpitating over hyperinflation, all this other nonsense we get from half the community, half the progressive community at that. This is the blocker for progress, Brad, in my opinion. It's not that the system is bad, it's that the idiocy, and it's like there's all these lacunas, there's all these little gaps being filled, these holes being filled with mythology and lore and any kind of conspiracy they can find to make it fit, because they just don't understand, so they don't want to understand. So it's easier to tell you some big giant Moby Dick tale than actually sit there and learn the basics.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, money is a tool that we use to mobilize our resources, and we can do that. We can mobilize people in a lot of different ways to do a lot of different things. And the way we mobilize people right now is pretty sad. I mean, let's go back to the beginning. Like I said, my dad works at NASA. I've spent a lot of time around some really smart engineers, and it's really sad that the cool projects that they want to do can't be done because someone can't find the money. And everyone says like, oh, well, look at how great our system is. We made the internet through a private corporation. But if you look like The Entrepreneurial State by Mariana, I forgot her last name, I'm sorry, but just Google that, Entrepreneurial State, and you'll see like innovation a lot of times has come from the government. It has come from mobilizing resources towards something that might not be profitable. And that's science. You know, you got to fail a lot of times. You got to try a lot of different things that might not work. And if we're stuck in this idea that everything we have to do in our world has to be profitable, then you know, we're going to be stuck. We're not going to be able to do anything. And so we need to realize that we can use our money to mobilize our citizens to do awesome things, and that's what we should do.
Amen. All right. Well, look, we're over time now. Brad, I would love for you guys to come back. I'd love to be able to sucker Laura Merling into coming on sometime.
It's her birthday today, so I don't think she could make it.
No, that's okay.
I think I'll try and push them. I think they're all listening, and you guys got to join me on here. It's fun. You know, they should come in. Definitely.
I am very passionate because, you know, just so we're all on the same page, I don't really care about MMT. I honestly don't. I have 9 children, and those 9 kids push me to care about them. And as I'm like, you know, water seeking a way out of something, I'm finding my level. MMT is airtight. It's watertight. And the good news for anybody listening, look, I'm just like John the Baptist. I'm not the Christ here. The people that really know this stuff, I mean, Brad has gone to school, learned this stuff from the masters, but the real masters, like L. Randall Wray was there from the beginning. Stephanie Kelton there from the beginning. Warren Mosler there from the beginning. These are folks that really, really get this and learned it, and they come on this program, and they talk from the bottom of their heart about this. Pavlina Cherneva. I mean, Ellis Winningham, Joseph Firestone, and we've had Rohan Gray, we've had Nathan Tankus, we've had so many, and if I forget a name, please, Stephen Hale, Ian Dooley, you know, you name it. We've had so many come through here, and they've all in concert said the same thing. Now, I will say this, and then I'll let you go. Joe Firestone does something that makes some people have some confusion. Joe walks us through every single archaic debt instrument there is. And the thing is that all of those things are man-made creations. Not one of them is the law of God. Every one of them is a man-made creation put there for some archaic use, usually something that had to do with defending the gold supply, okay? And that gold supply is no longer a concern, hasn't been since 1934, and really not since 1971 have we really been on any form of peg in that regard. Since 1971 to present, we have had a free-floating fiat currency, sovereign, non-convertible fiat currency, and we still live in a gold standard world, and that right there has got to change for us to ever have any progress. So,
well, thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
Absolutely. Brad, you're welcome back anytime, sir. Have a great night, everybody.
You too. Thanks.
Happy Easter to all.
Oh, yeah.
All right, sir. Bye-bye.